Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme. What leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape of deities or mortals, or of both, in Tempe or the dales of Arcady? What men or gods are these? What maidens loath? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on, not to the sensual ear, but more endeared, pipe to the spirit ditties of no tone. Fair youth, beneath the trees, thou canst not leave thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss. Thou winning near the goal yet, do not grieve. She cannot fade, thou hast not thy bliss. For ever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Happy, happy boughs, that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid in the spring adieu. And happy melodist, unwearied, for ever piping songs for ever new. More happy love, more happy, happy love, for ever warm and still to be enjoyed, for ever painting and for ever young, all breathing human passion far above, that leaves a heart high sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead and a parching tongue. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadst thou that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands dressed? What little town by river or seashore, or mountain built with peaceful citadel, is emptied of this folk, this pious morn? And, little town, thy streets for evermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can e'er return. O Attic shape, fair attitude, with breed of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou, silent form, dost tease us out of thought as doth eternity. Cold pastoral! When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain in midst of other woe than ours, a friend to man to whom thou say'st, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know.
All right, let's get started annotating this poem. We're going to be using the tip-fast method, which is title, paraphrase, figurative language, attitude or tone, shifts, title again, and theme. So start with the title, which is Ode on a Grecian Urn. Now, an ode means a story to depict a single item or scene or person. In this case, it's actually depicting a story on the side of this vase that the narrator is looking at. Now, it's important to note that Grecian actually comes up a lot in this poem, and it relates to some themes and helps you understand the context. So the title actually gives us a lot for this poem, so underline that. Got our title done. Now, to paraphrase the poem, you go through and you read it, and the narrator is telling a story about what is depicted on the side of this vase, whether it be about the two lovers who are under the trees, or the villagers on their way to a sacrifice and the empty village they leave behind. He paints the picture that has been painted on the side of the vase in this poem. So that is what the poem is about. And we'll go through each verse and try and understand what it's actually trying to convey. Now, how does Keats achieve his message? He uses plenty of figurative language to achieve his goals. And we'll talk about his goals more when we get to theme and tone. The specific figurative language he uses, one example would be personification. If we look into stanza 4, where the village is not telling a soul something, It's not telling the soul about how desolate it is. That's personification, meaning that the village is portraying human characteristics. It's not telling a soul, but a village doesn't speak. So Keats uses this personification to sort of give the village more emphasis than it normally would have. So that's an example of personification. Another piece of figurative language that Keats uses is repetition. If we look into stanza 3, we have the word happy is repeated at least 5 times. At least 5 times. And what this is meant to depict is that this situation that these lovers are in, this perpetual instance of love and happiness, is actually very, very important to what Keats is trying to achieve, which is that contrast between the images on the vase and real life. So repetition of happy is actually trying to achieve that contrast. So that's how he uses the repetition. And then one last example of figurative language in this poem is in the first stanza, where you have anaphora. You have all these instances of Keats starting with what? What men or gods are these? What maidens loaf? What mad pursuits? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Now, the point of the first verse is to show that Keats is confused by the images on the side of the vase. He doesn't understand their purpose, what the story is actually trying to tell, because it's been thousands of years since the original painter actually wrote it. So obviously can't talk to the artist about it. So this anaphora is just perpetuating that image of being confused, not understanding. So you've got what repeated over and over again at the beginning of these questions to achieve that goal. So as you can see, figurative language is used all over the place. And those are only a few examples. Now we move on to attitude or tone. This is actually ironic, which is another device that could be used, the irony. The tone of this piece could actually be considered happy, especially in verses or stanzas 2 and 3. And this is actually ironic because Keats is trying to contrast our human existence with the existence of the people on this vase. How this couple that is hanging out under the tree is actually forever in love. Their feelings never fade for each other. Their beauty is always there. Whereas in human life, beauty fades, love fades, and we all eventually have to face our own mortality. So that's how the tone is ironic. Now we come to an important part of poetry, which would be shifts. There are 3 shifts in this poem. There's one after stanza 1, one after stanza 3, and one after stanza 4. The first shift is a shift from not understanding to understanding, or a shift from the introduction to his first example. So in the first stanza, you have Keats talking about what he doesn't understand about the scene. And then the second stanza, he's talking about what he's seeing and how he thinks about it. And he's gradually coming to grips with what's actually on the side of that vase. And then the second shift is after stanza 3, where he moves from his first example to his second example, where he goes from talking about the couple that is under the tree, their perpetual beauty, to the villagers that are leaving a village on their way to a sacrifice, and how the village will be empty forever and never get to tell its story. That is a shift from one example to another one. And then the last shift is the shift from going from examples to actual understanding of what the vase is trying to convey, what it means for the narrator, and what Keats is trying to convey with this poem, where it's talking about mortality. So you go from the examples of the vase to the actual meaning of it. So that's how the shifts are done. Now we go back to the title after looking through these different aspects and see if we can get any more meaning from it. Now, title, Ode on a Grecian Urn, it still has that idea of being a story on the side of a vase, but you can think about it like the Greeks being thousands of years ago, a society that is long since ended, but it's still showing up on this artwork. It's still being presented. And again, it goes back to that contrast between mortality and the vase. Mortality and the side of this vase that never changes, that is always there and is always the same. So the title gives us a little bit more context than it did before, now that we've actually looked through it. Now comes time for theme. So this poem was written in 1819, which was the Romantic period. Now, there are a couple of romantic themes that are present in this poem that are important to note. One would be nature, and other is transcendence, or transcend for shortness. Nature, meaning that throughout the poem, Keats uses different instances of natural situations, like the couple that is under the trees, or the flowery tale, or the green altar. All of these are meant to connect with what we understand. Nature in the Romantic period was used as a vehicle of greater understanding. So Keats uses these instances of nature to actually understand what the vase is trying to say, because many times during the examples you see the depiction of nature not only to describe what is on the vase, but to describe what the vase means and how he understands it. So that's nature. And then transcendence, again, that's going back to the idea of mortality and what that actually means for the narrator and how he has to face with his eventual death. And looking at the side of the vase, it's great for the images because they are always there, ever present, but eventually we are all going to have to face the fact that we will leave this earth the same way that all our ancestors have. And that is Ode on a Grecian Urn.